Hello, sir. How are you?
How you doing today?
I am doing great. It's so cool to see you.
You as well.
I am so excited. I mean, I started writing to you in 2019.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I just looked back to some of those emails and you were so kind to reply. And this is so cool of you to jump on this because I have so many questions and I just think your work is so amazing.
Well, shoot, give me whatever questions you got. I'll see if I can answer them in an intelligent format.
Well, you were the chief engineer, the chief recording engineer at the power station. How did that even happen? Where did this all start?
I mean, I moved to New York City at my 19th birthday with no job, and I just fought my way. Started working with Tony May. I never had to be a one of those guys that watches the phones and makes the coffee and works in the tape lab. I was always the I was in. I had 1 week to learn how to basically run a studio. It was before I was at Power Station. It was a place called Generation Sound, and I worked for a jazz engineer named Tony May. So we were
Wow.
doing records like, you know, Charlie Hayden and Anthony Braxton and the Heath Brothers and all sorts of those sort of 3 day jazz records you would do.
Well, were you playing with your own recording gear and microphones before that? How did you even
No, I mean,
decide?
I was back in Vermont. I grew up in Vermont, so I grew up in a small little town. I would modify stuff at home and do things like that to record, and you know. But for me, it was getting into the studios, and within 3 years, shit, maybe even less than that, I was at Power Station, and I was the first person hired that wasn't hired as an intern. I was hired as an assistant when I first started.
That's awesome.
Kind of pissed off some of the interns because everybody came up from the bottom. So like, they needed someone that could step right in. So
Yeah.
I
But
stepped right in.
setting up mics and knowing understanding about acoustics, was it the other studio that taught you some of those things?
No, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, working in those, the old school jazz records were done in 3 days. So you'd throw some mics up and 16 tracks, sometimes 24 tracks, and you'd mix it in a day. You'd record it in 2 days and mix it in one day.
Catch what you got.
It was all played. It wasn't any overdub. So it's kind of once you got the band's balance, you just kind of let it go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it all
Oh,
changed. The power station, it all changed. I was quick. I was smart. I guess that's pretty much how it happened. I didn't become an engineer till, well, I think it was 80, late 83, early 84. I was working on with Jan Eric Kongshaug from ECM on Pat Metheny's first Circle record.
wow.
Pat wasn't thrilled with the mixes after Jan had gone back to Holland, I think it was, or Sweden or Norway, anyway, one of those places.
Hmm.
And he asked a couple of the other staff engineers at the time at Power Station to see if to try to remix it, and he wasn't happy with those. So then he asked me if I wanted to give it a shot, and I, I never stopped working for him after that. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's how that started.
you have like 3 Grammys or more, they're all with Pat.
Started with Pat. Yep.
That is phenomenal.
We did every group record from First Circle on. Yeah, Manfred Eicher refused to put my name on the record because of or mixing it anyway because he was didn't want to upset Jan Eric. It's all politics, bullshit politics. No, that
Oh,
was the
jeez.
last record for ECM that Pat did, by the way. So it really didn't matter. I know I did it. Pat knows I did it. So it was all moot at that point.
And is that a backdrop picture behind you right now? Because those
Backdrop
Grammys look
picture.
massive.
Yeah, those are my 3 Grammys that are just backdrop.
I know they're heavy, but I didn't think they were that big when I held it.
They're a lot heavier than you think.
Yeah, they're like 5 pounds.
They're a lot heavier than you think.
Yeah, it's like, whoa.
They make good bookends.
I have a couple from a 3D printer that I got off of Etsy ju just to keep my spirits up.
Funny.
But when did it cross over? Were you always on tape before you left Power Station, or did it get to ADATs or DA-88s?
It started on tape first, and then we were kind of the first ones to get into the digital world. Um, Gus Skinnis, who was a friend of mine at Sony, was one of the guys that sort of started the digital, and so he would bring over, some of the early digital machines. You know, the 3324 I think was one of the first. Well, the 3M was the first one, but those were pretty
Yeah.
much gone and dinosaurs by the mid 80s anyway.
Right.
But we were trying to experiment with high bit stuff, so we Gus modified a 3324 and made it a 16 track and put the extra 8 bits on the other tracks. So
Hmm.
it was a 24-bit machine instead of a 16-bit machine. So we
Nice.
one of the first ones of those, which was kind of fun. I mean, editing digital tape and editing analog tape were two different things, and I was good at both. It was tricky to cut 3348s where you have 48 tracks, and digital editing's a whole with I'm talking about with a razor blade, not with
Yes. Yes.
the
That
lost art form, as I like to call it.
That I've never done.
Oh,
I mean, I've spliced on leader and tail, but I've never like a serious edit on tape of in the middle of music on a beat trying to get
that's
it.
how I had to do it back in the analog days before computers. So the
Yep.
one to do it, cut it.
Jeez. Did you know Susie Hollander?
Susie Hollander, the name's familiar.
She was assisting and probably one of the interns a
Gosh,
bunch of years in the 90s, I think.
Bill Shenneman left us to go work at Berkeley or teach at Berkeley, I believe.
Bill was at the power station?
Bill was at the power station. Yeah, he was a staff engineer at Power Station before he.
Wow. I knew Bill just a little bit. He had the greatest John Lennon story.
Oh, he's got plenty of stories. None that I'm going to share with you on this Zoomcast, but
Why not?
some are not meant to be spoken of.
What about Dave O'Donnell? Did you
Dave
train
O'Donnell,
him?
he was one of my assistants for years. He was
I
a
was going
great
to say,
guy.
did
He
you
was
train him? Yeah.
Yep, trained him. He was an awesome cat.
Yeah, still is.
Yeah.
Still is. Wow.
He was one of the I tried to treat my assistants like people. I hated it when I was an assistant, someone would just treat me like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And I learned one day I was working with, gosh, who was this? I forget the guy's name, but I saw he was just treating me like crap for days. I saw he was about to record over the vocal comp track. This is in the analog days before it was, anything's backed up. Now I had an option of, do I tell him? Do I let him go? I finally told him, but I almost let him just do it just because he was such a dick.
Yeah.
So I decided not to be that guy so that my assistants would actually help me. And they had good ideas. Sometimes they would have ideas that I didn't think of, and you can learn from anybody.
Yeah.
You don't just because I'm in the big chair doesn't mean that some guy behind me doesn't know something I don't. So I was always open to hearing suggestions and ideas and techniques and things like that. So that's how you learn.
And you knew James Farber, right?
James Farber, sure.
Now, did you train him or did he train you?
We were both engineers on staff, so we didn't train each other. We were both. Power Station had about 5 or 6 staff engineers and about 8 or 10 assistants that were on staff, and then some interns on top of that. It was 24 hours a day, 3 studios. I mean, as you know, the Berkeley. I mean, you've got all. We built a 4th one towards the end before I went independent. We called it Studio D. It's kind of dumb because it was just a mixing room with like a gigantic SSL and just didn't make any sense.
Wow. Have you visited?
The only way to make an SSL sound good is to bypass it. I was down in the Bahamas mixing the Jimmy Buffett record, and I couldn't stand the sound of the old E consoles. They were just terrible sounding. So I found a way so I bought in all this gear from Miami. Brought in tube gear, tube EQs, tube compressors, and it went directly out of the tape machine into whatever I wanted, and then into the insert return of the SSL. It gave me 5 dB more headroom, opened up the whole sound. I still got the aux sends, the pan pots, and the faders, which is all I needed at that point after that because everything else was behind me. But the sound of the console just changed dramatically.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yep.
What were some of?
It just bypassed all the top stuff. Just bypassed all the crap.
Yeah. What was some of the outboard?
Oh, it was all Summits and Pultecs and Manleys and just anything. I'm a tube guy, so anything that had tubes in it was good for me.
Yeah. Do you own a bunch of your own equipment or just bounce around, use others?
I do. Well, I mean, of course, now that we're all on computers, all my plugins are tube emulated stuff and
Mm.
regime emulated stuff. So I can change the bias and I can, you know, over bias, do the things we used to do in analog tape back in the day.
You can really get in there and make it sound good.
You can change it. Yeah, you can definitely change the tonal frequencies without actually doing a whole lot with. Half of mixing is how it's recorded. People think, oh, I just got to get
Absolutely.
tape, but it's not that way at all. It's if you don't get it to tape right, then we call it fixing it in the mix instead
Yeah.
of actually taking it further in the mix. And I try to all the kids that I still work, when I'm in a studio recording, I try to teach them that it's not just making sure that it's on tape, it's getting it on tape to a place where you can then take it somewhere else.
Yeah. Were you doing a lot of those pre-thinking of tape, recording things extra bright in those days? And did you have
No,
to consciously effort to tape it back?
well,
Tape.
I mean, we all got into our little fads. I think Mutt Lang was probably the one that taught us, you take the Dolby A cards and you encode it. You put all the vocals through it and you encode it and you don't decode it. And that sort of, yeah, your just shimmer, your brightness. I mean, the Aphex Oral Exciter was at 1.425K, I think is what it's
Yeah.
boosting or something like that. Stupid things. We got into making 500 microphones to a drum set now. Four, I'm happy. So
Yeah, definitely.
phase is everything. People, phase is one of the things I learned that's probably one of the most important things that people don't think about is phase. And the more
Okay.
microphones you have, especially on a drum kit, the more phase. EQ, just EQing something is phase shift. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a record with Peter Wolf where I refused to use any EQ or compressors or effects, and I just did mic placement. And I only had, I think on Sean Pelton, I had 3 mics on him, put the drums in mono straight in the middle. Everything was recorded in mono, so I could spread them all around. And the image was great because it's all about the center point.
Mm.
It's that point back there that's important. This left right thing's fine, but it's the depth that makes it that Z axis, whatever that is in the back.
All right.
That's what pulls you in and sucks you in.
And that's where the power is.
It's where I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's one of those esoteric things that I always try to shoot for to try to get the depth in. Depth comes from the middle. Like I see people recording everything in like guitars in stereo and keyboards in stereo and everything in stereo and they're panning it left, right, left, right. That's just glorified mono. That's not going to help you very much. It's not going to give you dimension.
Mm.
You need, in my opinion, it's one of my pet peeves with people. Everything's left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right.
In one of the emails we were conversing, you were telling me you were trying to pass on a lot of these cool things to your son, and he was learning. What are some of the things that people are surprised about that have nothing to do with any of the training that's on YouTube for free?
Well, yeah, I've never watched any of the training that's on YouTube for free, but I would say that, the music's all emotion. So, if you're not digging it and you're not getting it, no one else is going to do it or get it. So it's, it's an odd thing, I don't really know. I have a very sensitive ear. I've had motion sickness since I was a little kid. I get seasick. It's just one of those things. I hear shit. I can hear a mix and I can tune out every instrument and focus just on one particular instrument in there and hear it clearly and everything that it's doing, which is kind of an odd thing. I can just sort of pull away all the other things in the mix, which is kind of why Pat kept me around for so long, because when you have 100 tracks and you're trying to stick them all down to 2, is not that easy.
No.
So
And I don't think I would call that an odd thing. I think I would call that a superpower because the ability to focus is tremendous, even just as a human being on the planet, because whatever you're focusing on, you're giving your attention to. Whatever you're giving your attention to creates momentum. Whatever's creating momentum is where your energy is going. And if you're, thinking and talking stupid to yourself, you're down in the tubes.
Right, I know.
And you're not finding any solutions
If
because
you
you're
have
just
to
making
think,
your problem bigger.
if you have to think, you've already lost the game. Yeah,
But I'm so happy to hear you talk about the feeling of everything, because I feel like with colleges and curriculum and things, nobody can charge you for feelings. Nobody can charge you for energy. And that's the most important part of everything that we're doing. It can only charge you for information. And even if you're excited and sharing the information, students are thinking they're not getting anything, and they don't understand where the importance is, that the magic is in the details and why you have goosebumps. And we don't have to explain why. We just have to figure out how to give you more of them so that
well,
you can do it on purpose.
it's it's you got to get yourself off before you get anybody else off. That's kind of how I say it.
Yeah, yeah. And the Beatles always said that, and Pat has always said that, and it's always about feeling something. And there are enough billions of people in the world that somebody else is bound to feel it if you do. But you can't put something confidently in the world if you're not feeling it.
No, no, not at all. And that's it goes for live music as well. Whether it's you're putting it on
Yeah.
or you're playing on stage, if you're not if you don't feel it, you can't expect anybody else to.
And your intention and all the love you put into it, or whether or not you're there. I mean, you can just tell when someone's singing a song if they leave the building. They're just like they're thinking about lunch. You're like, you started the song good, but you left.
Well, it's an odd thing because as being a performer now, the good times for me is when I don't even know there's people there. Like I'm so inside of the music that I don't no idea that I'm playing in front of people. I'll all of a sudden look out and go, oh wow, there's people there. Because I'm deeply inside of whatever it is musically that's going on, and so it's not sort of turn off the performance hat, and it's more into the music part of it than I am into the performing part of it.
You're feeling it so fully that you're just in it.
Yeah, I'm just in it and I have no idea there's people there. That's when it's fun for me.
A lot of the sensitive things you were mentioning, I also have. And yet sometimes it's the bright lights on stage and the overwhelming volume of stage volume. Sometimes none of that throws you off. You're okay with that performing side of it?
Funny because my lighting director will ask me and goes, "How are the lights?" I'm like, I have no idea.
What lights? Well,
And, that's good because if it's not distracting me,
yeah.
but doing what they're supposed to be doing, then I suppose that's probably then it's probably good.
Right. But the an audiologist told me that there's only one section in the brain that does all the senses. So if you are a trained musician, as we are, all your senses are heightened, and that's why you're so sensitive. And really, those are your superpowers. Uh, if something's too bright, all of a sudden you can't hear. If something is too loud, all of a sudden you can't see. It makes sense to her. But I had never heard that before, and I just thought, oh my God, I could tip
Those
over sometimes.
those nights where I can't get my tone right for
Mm,
no reason, and I'll fiddle all. And as an engineer, it's kind of like a Kurt gun. It's like the kiss of death because
me too.
I feel like I should be able to fix this, and I spend all night long, just tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. Nothing seems to work. The next day, I'll just plug it in, play. It's fine.
Is there?
No particular reason.
Well, sometimes it's like I feel like I can't play if the sound is not right, you
So I
know?
feel like I've never played the guitar at all. Like
Oh, yeah. It's like you put it in your lap and you go, "What is this thing? I've never seen it before. I've been playing over 50 years."
it's just it's just I just love the life in general.
Yeah, yeah, it's just that human craziness. What happened then after those digital machines that you said ADATs? Did they ever go to DA88s?
Never went to ADAT. I did one record on ADAT, I think, with Jimmy Buffett, but ADATs are fucking pain in the ass. It was
Oh, I know, I had 4 of them.
I still have 6 somewhere in storage, but
I have 1 over there
that one's enough. Um,
just to try to, dump
remember,
things into Logic once in a while if I need to go back to anything.
it was a shitty format, kind of like CD's a shitty format, it's just terrible. I
Yeah.
never MP3s. I never listened to MP3s ever. I don't have a big CD collection because I couldn't stand the sound of analog.
Wow.
Here's an interesting story. I was when I did the first Lyle May solo record I did. I can't remember the name of it. It was
I
early
have it.
It was done on a 1610, the old big 1610s, and it had the U-Matics, the big U-Matic tapes where it was recorded
Yeah,
onto.
that we used to master on.
Right. Bob Ludwig had, the first digital sort of mastering board. So we went in there and mastered it. Years later, and of course I mixed it to half-inch 2-track as well, just because you do. It's what you do. Years later, we remastered it and with Ted Jensen and had both formats and the analog, even though it had noise like analog tape does, just blew out of the water the digital. And we were so infatuated with the fact that there was no noise. I think that we lost track of the fact that all this other music and stuff was in the analog. And we were just so enamored with the fact that, look here, there's no hiss. We don't hear any tape hiss. And
But there was no
God,
magic either.
there's all sorts of other things going on. So we remastered
Wow.
it with the analog and it's much
Wow,
better.
wow.
Noisier, but better.
And now are you on Pro Tools all the rest of these years?
Yeah, when I went down to Florida to work with Ricky Martin on his second record, all the guys from Full Sail, they were computer, you know, really good with computers, but I have no idea about miking or anything like that. So
Mm,
I was kind of brought down to help teach them, and they taught me Pro Tools, and I taught them a little bit what I knew about, mic choice, mic placement, you know, all those sorts of nuances that I learned all the years of Power Station.
when are you gonna write a book?
I mean, I'm sitting here at my, if you could see it, I got my little Meyer HM1s and my stacks of lift drives, and Pro Tools is Pro Tools. It's, you know, it's convenient. Is it the best format? No, it's convenient.
Yeah.
It's
I've
easy.
been treating Logic like it was a tape deck since I started over on that format in 2005. But yeah, all the mics and the preamps and all that beautiful stuff, so much better.
I was a Mac guy, so Pro Tools has made much more sense for me. I think a lot
Yep.
of my PC friends are Logic people.
Oh, I'm on a Mac though.
Are you on a Mac? I think
Yep.
back in the day it was all on PC though. Maybe they've gotten to figure out a way to get to Mac, but
Yeah.
it's all the same stuff. It's all digital, it's all
Yeah. It's pretty.
waveforms. And the thing about it is people start looking at waveforms. What I try to teach people is don't look at the waveform because you'll see
Mm.
you're looking at it. If you're watching it, you'll hear it. Put a blanket over, you know, put a blanket over the screen or dim your screen so you don't see the waveform. So you're not, because your eyes will tell you that you're hearing it, but you're actually maybe not hearing it the way you're supposed to be hearing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I think it saved me too. Because everybody was having things professionally mastered. Now, as we're all mastering and doing some of those things ourselves, if you're not getting your speakers to respond to what's actually there and you're not hearing it, it's good to see, oh, you're blowing things up on all these frequencies. You better tame it, you know?
Yeah, and that's where some of the dynamic stuff plugins have been helpful because you can
Yeah.
really tweak what you want. You can,
It bounces over a certain threshold.
I use a lot of Isotope when I'm mastering. A lot of the programs in Isotope, pretty good.
You found them helpful
Yeah,
and musical?
there's some good tape emulators in there, and there's some good dynamic processing in there too that helps. Some of them
Super.
you can EQ but uneq at the same time. So it's kind of
Do you remember Journeyman working with Eric?
yep.
You got any cool stories or George moments?
George, the interesting part was George was that he wanted to sing in the studio with the big speakers on, and that was something that I had not encountered prior to that.
Really? He didn't want to use headphones.
No headphones, not in the studio, and be in the control room with with the big speakers on, sitting right behind me. You know,
Singing his harmony.
fine, sure, George, whatever you want.
So awesome. Oh
And the
my,
one good story I have about Stevie Ray Vaughan was we were sitting there after one of the long, arduous, we put Little Wing for like 4 hours or something like that. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. We are sitting there just at the probably drinking Jack Daniels or whatever. was just he and I didn't know anything really much about Stevie Ray. This is late, what, 83, I guess it was. He had just finished working with Bowie on Let's Dance, which we also did at the Power Station.
Yeah.
And I said, you must have listened to Hendrix a lot as a kid. And he just said, Rob, I'm going to tell you a story. You're not going to believe it, but it's true. So I said, go ahead. So I never listened to Hendrix ever as a kid. I was a Delta blues guy, Austin Delta blues guy. And I had a dream one day, and Hendrix came to me in this dream and showed me how to play all these things. And I woke up in a cold sweat, picked up my guitar, and could play what I couldn't or didn't think about playing before. And he goes, that's how it started. And that's,
Wow,
yeah, that's
that's fun.
a good one.
I know. I mean, sometimes they say there is no distance in the spirit realm and everything is up for grabs as far as information that you could ask almost anybody and answers would come if you just ask. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, he said it changed. I mean, I could barely play his guitar the way his action and his strings were so heavy.
Yeah,
Unbelievable that he could actually play it. I mean, it was literally, I think he had 13 to 60, something like
something
that.
like that. Yeah.
And the
And
action was, was high. It was high.
I always did the thing with the thinner strings and a thicker pick, get a fatter sound. And it's much easier on your fingertips.
I'm 11 to 56, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like 11 for the like jazz guitars, 10 for acoustics, and 9 for bending.
It's all whatever you can make it sound good. I mean, it's all, look, Clapton plays with 3 fingers. He doesn't even use his pinky. So
I know. I had a student come in once. She was playing all this cool stuff, and she was only using 3 fingers, and her hands looked exactly like Clapton's. I said, "You love Eric Clapton, don't you?" She said, "I adore him." You know, I love his playing, and she just had it down, even to the position of her hands and the 3 finger technique.
it's, it still amazes me that he can do it, to be honest with
I know, I know. And that was a fun thing to learn from Graham Nash's book because he was saying that he and Paul McCartney and George all used the same guitar book. And up to then, I didn't even know that any of them had ever used a book, but it made sense.
you.
It was Bert Whedon's Learn Guitar in a Day, and I bought a copy off of Amazon just to see what it was. And it was like any other Alfred's or basic Mel Bay #1 book. This is how you hold your hands, this is how you hold the pick, these are the first beginning chords, this is how the string names go. So it's no wonder they knew so much and that they looked so good. A lot of people are watching folks on YouTube and stuff, and their hand technique is out to lunch and everybody just lets it go. Even at Berkeley, I'm always like, what about technique? What about position? What about getting a really good sound and not undermining yourself? Like they don't even know that that's a thing because they don't watch decent players play or they didn't use a book.
It's interesting to see some, like, I use my thumb a lot
I
to get
like that too, actually.
yeah. And I got that from Metheny because Metheny uses his thumb quite a bit when he's doing stuff.
Yeah,
G. Havens that I worked with this one time, his thumb between
it's
this
really long.
thumb is like that long. So
Yeah.
he could bar a guitar from this knuckle out. It was
Yeah, I used to see him on TV when I was a kid. I was like, what is up with that thumb? It's extra long.
his knuckle too. It's just this knuckle out is weird. It was just freaky.
Wow. Wow.
Normal. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Was Gary Burton's reunion album recorded on 2-inch tape or ADATs?
No ADATs. We didn't have ADATs at Power Station. We had 3324s at first and 3348s. We had some Atari. God, I can't remember the model number. There were 32 tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Um, they were kind of like the Mitsubishi. I guess they were kind of you could
Right.
format. It was a PD format, I believe, what they called it.
I remember those.
We never had ADATs at all in the studio. That was something that was,
That was smart.
well below our
I
threshold.
mean, they said it was the industry standard, but not at Power Station.
It elevated up to the 3348s, which were the 48 track Sonys that were high. They were 24-bit, so
Hmm.
they were the HRs. 3348.
Oh,
You got to get 2 of them, and you could sort of edit between the two, so I didn't have to cut the tape anymore. I could just sort of
Oh,
offset,
good.
move things around and stuff like that. So
Oh, sweet.
yeah,
Now you were talking about building a studio for a Buena Vista guy.
yeah, I'm hoping to still. I'm still talking to him about it.
He still hasn't done it.
He still hasn't done it yet, but I'm
Wow.
pushing him to do it. It's important that we get another, residential studio that actually, I can train the staff and then just let them run their, do their thing.
Yeah, but I was asking you a little earlier. What about a book? Maybe you can get
And
some of these
they don't
beautiful.
all my free time.
Yeah, right. Well, it probably could happen this way, right? People could just talk to you for hours and hours and then culminate all that stuff.
I've had people ask me about it, but I don't know. I hate talking about myself. It's not really an interesting subject to me. It's
Well, how you learn, how you hear, and the magic you create with the same tools that we all use, that's something to really pass along.
I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of, I've got a wall full of Grammy citations from the Academy for my work and, gold and platinum records. They're nice and everything, and I'm proud of it, but
Hmm.
I think the business changed when it became the home studio thing and everybody thought they were an engineer and everybody thought they were a producer. And
Hmm.
I felt it was time. I'd accomplished all I needed to do there. And so I still do it for free. I produce people's records for free. I don't charge any money. And I find an artist I like and you know, I
Get
do it.
involved.
Yeah, get involved and, I can do most of it right here in my bedroom for crying out loud.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's the nice, convenient thing about it for all of us.
I got some old 87 A's that I'm still kicking around that sound pretty good on pretty much everything.
Oh, sweet.
The old ones you used to be able to put two batteries in them. So if
Yeah,
you got phantom power, so it's
we've got you covered. What did you do over the years while you were learning? If you got frustrated, or how did you stay inspired with all the? Maybe you
uh,
just you kept so busy you didn't have time to fret.
I think the biggest lesson I learned was that it's not my record, like I had to learn how to not be upset or deterred by someone wanting something different than I was giving them.
Mm,
My job is to take it to where I hear it, but my real job is to make the client happy with what they're getting. And
mm,
knocking that chip off my shoulder when I was younger was probably the biggest lesson I learned. Is,
wow.
do all the skills that I have to make the client and the artist feel good about their music. It is their music. It's not mine.
Yeah. Tricky though, when you know it's against your better judgment and
Yeah.
they don't care.
But at the same time, they're paying me to make them happy. So,
Right.
sacrifices you make that you normally wouldn't do. But, that's my job. That's the job
Yeah.
of any engineer or any producer, really.
Yeah. Any kind of service.
You have to, your job is to do your job, but also to make your client happy. And if that means doing something that you wouldn't normally do or having something louder than you wouldn't normally have it, and it's their record.
Yeah.
That was my big lesson.
That's huge. Really huge. My brothers are still talking about that as graphic artists. They're like,
It's not that what I was doing was bad. It was just different than what they wanted, and
yeah,
it's okay to be different. It's here to be
that's
different. I
true.
put that poster on my wall when I was a kid.
Yeah, as long as the quality isn't too
No, and
far
of course
down
I
on
would never let it, get that far down.
that. Take my name off of there. uh, how did you? Well, you must have always been in love with the Grateful Dead, but Dark Star Orchestra.
They just asked me to play with them, and I was still doing records at the time because I was still independent. So every time I was between an album, I would go out and do a tour.
Wow.
And, you know, and then I think Ricky Martin's the one that really killed me because the politics of everything with Tommy Mottola and and Sony and the whole nine yards was just I felt like I was, for the first time in my life, I was doing it for the money.
Hmm.
Believe that people would pay me to do this stuff for years. Like, you're really gonna pay me this? Like, I'll do it for free.
Yeah.
But kind of felt dirty, and I didn't like the politics of it. I didn't like where it was going. And this band had too
Hmm.
many balls to play with them. So I've been doing that now for 24 years, which is a long time.
I know.
Band's been going for 25. I started in '99. So, but I
Wow.
was doing records into 2000. I think one of Pat's records I was doing in late 2001. That's when after that record, I joined full time.
Wow. And
One
then you started restoring the Betty boards.
I started restoring tapes and transferring tapes, and of course, I can't keep my hands off tapes. Man, I love tape.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
know.
yeah,
I
I,
missed my half-inch 8-track. I had a Tascam 38 for a bunch of years. So just a couple of years ago, I got a 1-inch MS-16 just to have fun with it again. Even just the sounds of it, it just feels like home.
well, it was interesting because I had to sort of learn how to bake tapes, which was, you know a
I
lot of the
bet.
56 back in the day. The formulation of that particular tape, the back coat
Nothing.
got really gooey and sticky, and it would
Yeah.
to the other side. So if you didn't sort of dry it out and reformulate it, it would you never there was no way to repair it. So I was
Yeah.
experimenting with blank 456 that I had a couple of that were of that same gooey quality.
Mm.
I hunt mushrooms here in the mountains of Colorado in the summertime, so I have this mushroom dehydrator that has these levels, and I can get it down to 110 degrees, which is where you want to do it for baking the tapes.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like 110 degrees for about 6, 7 hours, sometimes 8.
Oh, my God.
They had packed in, and then I was
So
able to play it.
don't use your convection oven. Use a
No, no, no,
dehydrator.
no, 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 no. Like a brisket, nice and slow.
That's really funny. Oh, what about the developing of talent? How did that come about?
You know, you find a good write. It's all writing. I think for me, it was all about the writing.
Yeah.
If you find somebody that writes good songs and good lyrics, you can figure out a way to work with that and make that work. That's kind of what I did. The last record I did, I sat a guy on my couch and I had him play everything, sing everything live, and play everything live. I used most of the vocals that he sung at the time, and
Oh, cool.
leakage is your friend. People are so afraid of leakage, but leakage doesn't have to be your enemy. Leakage can be your friend as well.
Yeah.
And I
If you
think,
know what you know.
and also, perfection is not what I was looking for. So if the emotional content was in the performance,
Yeah.
there was, something that was, maybe a squeak in a guitar note or a vocal that could have been more in tune. But if the performance and the emotion, like we talked about, was there, that's totally superseded perfection in my book. So
Absolutely.
that's what
Talk
I
about
always try to teach people is that, perfection, no one wants perfection. People want emotion. So if emotion means that it's not technically perfect, but you're getting it, you're feeling it, then by all means, that's the way you go.
I know the first time one of my students showed me all kinds of things with auto tune and Melodyne and all these things. He just took one of my vocals and messed with it and stuff. It took out everything that was me. And I
Yeah.
thought, I don't like this at all. I don't think I'll ever use this. I'd
Towards
rather re-sing it.
with Hole, which was Courtney Love's band back when I was still in New York City. That
Hmm.
was it was Michael Beinhorn was the producer on it, and I was one of the guys in New York that was known to be really good with digital stuff and analog stuff and tying machines together,
Hmm.
along with all the other things. And so we were recording Courtney's vocals, and I'd have to spin them off and send them to this guy who this is before like Pro Tools and anything like that. And he would sit there on his computer and he would tune her vocal and he'd send it back, and I'd have to put it back in to the analog tapes. And he tuned one too good, so we had to send it back and he had to detune it because she couldn't possibly sing that well in tune. So we had to send it back to him for him to detune it.
Oh my goodness.
It wasn't so good.
Of course. Yeah, I think everything's gone too far. Now, when you say produce, how much arranging are you doing versus actually producing?
Both. I mean, production is arranging in my book. You know, it's it's all of the above. You know, and I mean, I think as an engineer, you're always somewhat of a producer. It's why Pat gave me associate producer credit on a bunch of the group records because of all the knowing that all the stuff that I was doing for him in the studio was invaluable.
Wow,
'Cause
that's
you're always producing in a way.
yeah.
I think I also learned from Phil Ramone, and I've learned from a lot of the great producers knew who to call for the gig and knew who to call for the particular job that they were looking for, whether it was bass
Yeah.
player, this or that, and they just let it go. That's and sometimes you know that's the job of the producers, just to know who pull the Rolodex out when we had those and
Who
call
can
that
do it right? You don't have to say anything to them. They're just going to do it right.
exactly.
Like a casting director.
Pretty much, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And they just sit back and let it happen and give their feedback, and it seemed fairly simple at the time.
Yeah. Well, I always thought George Martin was a fantastic producer because he was such a great arranger.
Well, I think that was his strength. This was his, he was able to really tailor all of that stuff into a format that really worked well for everybody.
Yeah.
People really, it's one thing I've been trying to teach my kid is that, getting too cute for your britches kind of thing. Like, yeah, you can do that, but what's its purpose? Why? I'm always asking why. Like, why are
Yeah.
you what is this meaning? Why is that there? What's its purpose?
Hmm.
Show you that you can play those chords, or that you can put in this, less is
And
more.
if you can't anchor it to anything or explain its existence, it's like there for
You're
showing off that it's not supporting the song in any way.
It's just show up, which means get rid of it.
Yeah. Do you write your own songs as well?
I do. I just can't write lyrics, so I've got like so many instrumentals that are just sitting in Pro Tools somewhere. I just lyrics have never been my forte. The English language was never my forte, so I struggle with that. I'm somewhat dyslexic a little bit, and so things come out backwards sometimes. And
Have you heard of free association or object writing?
no,
It's really cool. You could take a notebook and just scribble anything and fill pages of nonsense, even if you're just writing down words independently with commas in between. They're not even full sentences or thoughts. And I could show you an example, I guess. But it's the fun way of trying to get words started because it's so much easier for me to come up with lyrics as well. I mean, come up with music
yeah,
as well.
it's easy. That's the easy part.
Yeah. And it's guitar's always in your lap and you're feeling things and sounds and frequencies all match up and it's just delicious to just move your fingers around and hear something that feels exactly right. You resonate with it to some degree and you just think, okay, this is cool. This is something. But then sometimes, like Paul Simon would say, you just and you get attached to a vowel sound, and then you say, okay, yeah, that word should be there now. That's a good vowel sound for there. And then you think, what rhymes with now, and what can I say that might involve that word, or like it's really putting together a puzzle in another way that isn't sonic, but is still in your ability since you speak the language.
I think I write better on the piano.
Oh, okay. Even lyrically?
I think just the piano makes it makes a lot of sense. I can't translate
Sure.
guitar, oddly enough. Like, but I can write my writing's better when I'm writing on the piano than it is when I can't move that to a guitar because it's a whole different thing for some reason. I don't know. Having it all to sit there right in front of me, I don't know, makes
Whatever works. Like it doesn't matter. I mean, the musician is you. So any instrument or tool or plugin or microphone you want to use it's you that's gonna come through, which is so great. But the free association is allowing yourself to write the worst shit in America, and it doesn't matter what it is. And then when you go back later with a piano idea or a guitar idea, sometimes a phrase stands out or something comes into mind. And you go, that would be a cool title. And then all of a sudden a line pops in your head. You don't know why. And you just allow yourself to keep going. One of my students did that with single words separated by a comma. And I was thinking, what in the world are you doing? Like, you didn't even put in actual sentences. And then I did the same thing because he read, I wanted everybody to read their free association. And then I wanted everybody to read the lyric they got out of it. And then I wanted everybody to write play the song that they wrote from it. And we were all so impressed that this guy wrote something from something as stupid as this. But then we all said, I can't wait to go home and do it. So back in April, it looked like of '04, I wrote this blurb, which was nothing. And you just leave it. You don't even think anything's going to come of it. You don't care. But then in May, the next month, I'm playing in the backyard in this tuning with the capo there. And I love the little guitar idea I'm coming up with. And the first words I see, because I have a cold, are up here. And it said, beyond talk. Oh, there it is, beyond talk. So I said, yeah, beyond talk, I'm tired and needing a change because we were going to be in between semesters. And I just wanted to have a break. And then I saw star-filled ceiling up here because I had those fake stars on my ceiling in the bedroom. And I said, behind lights where my star-filled ceiling remains. And then I saw the word blueprint and I needed healing because I wasn't feeling good. And I said, delivers my eyes from this troubled haze, because I was, feeling out of it and stuff like that. And then I went, wait a minute. I have like a 2-syllable word happening here. Beyond, behind. What other 2-syllable words that start with B can I think of? Beware, behave, believe, before. I'm seeing a pattern. So then I said, okay, start a sentence with beneath, start a sentence with between. I was outside. I went, okay, beneath clouds where a smile can surrender this frown. I mean, I tried to simplify it because, there's George going, I look at the floor and I notice it needs sweeping, or I see it needs sweeping. It's like, it's not rocket science sometimes. Sometimes lyrics are this whole thing about what you're feeling inside that you're trying to pull out, what's happening around you, or yeah, the floor needs sweeping, but yeah, I'm going to go outside now and now I'm under the moon, and how free does that feel? And somehow just pulling in all that life experience. And that's certainly all in you because of all the music you've done. But I love this song. It felt like I had channeled this song from George or something, because it almost sounds like a George Harrison tune to me. It was like, beyond talk, I am tired and needing this change. Behind lights where my star-filled ceiling remains. And the blueprint for healing delivers my eyes from this troubled haze. And a lot of the other ones are just sentences, but I'll go through when I have a guitar idea or a piano idea and just say, what words have I got? What can I sing about? And literally, I'm just grabbing anything from a newspaper or something, and a movie title, and just stick it together, and having the interest or the curiosity to say, maybe I can turn this into something. Like, you remember when they used to have those 3D paintings where you look at it, it just looks like an abstract mosaic of impressionism or something. And they'd say, no, let your eyes go out of focus and just let it happen, right?
I remember.
And all of a sudden you'd see an image. And the disappointing thing, there was nothing usually that interesting to see inside of them. Like this, you put faces of Beatles inside them, and then it would have been really nice to let your eyes go out of focus and zoom in on something. But what you're trying to do is say, I can do it, I can't do it, I can do it, I can't do it. And there's this little place. It's like I always think of it as like a threshold. Somehow, like when I was 10 years old, I just started writing songs one day. And I thought, I wonder if this will ever happen again, because this is such a magical thing. It just feels so different than real life. This is better than real life. I want to do this as often as I can and feel this again. And it's the same with then trying to stick with it when you're writing the tune. I would imagine you felt the similar thing when all of a sudden a mix is starting to drift and you're going, I'm losing it, I need a break. And you bring it back.
There was, when I was mixing song X, for instance, I think there was a song called Endangered Species, which was about 20 something minutes long. And that was pretty hardcore for 20 minutes. And I'd have to take a walk around the block after each pass of like because your brain, I mean, it was just so much to take in that I needed to walk around the block. Took me 10 or 15 minutes. I'd come back in, sit down, I'd run through it again and work on it some more and then walk around.
Wow.
And yeah, Endangered Species was a pretty intense tune to try to mix. Not simple.
Wow. 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 What about more Eric and George stories?
George, well, funny thing is, there was a guy that I don't think the record ever got released. I was working with Paul Carrick and this guy. His name was Greg Brown, but not the Greg Brown from Texas. This guy was from England. He was a slide player.
Like slide.
And George would come in and he'd just sit in the back of the control room and just sit there all day, just listening to this guy play slide. It's like this beautiful, British slide player, some of the Hawaiian style in a way. It's like he really, you know,
Hmm.
George, he would just walk in the studio every day, was out and cook them, which is not far from Henley, I think, where his house was.
Yeah.
And over every day and sit in the room and chat away like it was no big deal. George Harrison.
Don't mind me. Just George House in here.
At first, he was looking for a studio. He came into the studio he's looking for a studio to mix his live record from Japan, I think it was.
Hmm.
So it was around that time period. I guess it would have been probably early '90s, something like
Yes. Exactly.
that. And he just kept coming every day. After he came in to see the studio, and he sat down and was watching what we were doing, and we were recording and mixing and stuff like that. And he knew Paul Carrick, and Peter Van Hook was the producer. He was the drummer in the Van Morrison's band for at least a decade.
Wow.
So he knew a lot of the blokes, as they called them over there. And so he would just each day he'd come in and he'd have some tea and he'd sit there for hours. I mean, every day. Like, he had obviously decided he was going to mix his record there and just wanted to come and hang out. But I think it was the slide player that made him really want to come out. And this is the time that
Hang out.
I think he was on. It was right around the time that Virgin was getting weird, or one of those record labels over there was getting weird and going through changes and stuff like that. And I think this record just got caught up in that sort of world
Mm.
change and never got released. Should have, because it was great little record.
That slide record never got released?
Yeah, I got it on DAT somewhere in storage.
Oh, why didn't the artist want to put it out himself now that everything's changed?
Good question. I'm not sure. I've tried searching for him every now and then, but all that comes up is this Greg Brown from Texas, this big Texas guy.
Huh.
But
That's sad. I mean,
I'll send it when I find it. I'll send it to you. I'll let you check it out. It's pretty cool.
as I love George's slide playing, but if he was trying to get into some of the Hawaiian sound, I could see his interest in it,
This guy was great. He's just this very quiet, English cat, and George really really appreciated that kind of slide. Not so much the blues slide. It was bluesy, but it was just different. And I think George,
Yeah.
and just enjoyed hanging. I think those guys were. You got to think about it being a Beatle. He just couldn't go out and just hang. He couldn't go to the local pub and hang out. This was a place for him to go that was safe and he could still be around music and blah 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 and chat and do all the other things. That's my
Get out of the garden once in a while.
Well, it's a Boston Terrier, by the way.
Oh, cool.
Terrorizer. Runa,
Do you remember when you were recording that album for him, if he was in standard tuning or was he in different
I don't know.
alternate tunings?
Probably both.
Yeah.
The way.
Well,
I'm
What what material slide might he been using, or
he was using I use a brass slide because I like
yeah,
it, but
that
he
sound?
was using a glass slide.
Yeah, I like a medium weight glass on my third finger.
Yeah, I use a brass on my pinky.
Nice.
Then I can change chords by
You can
using.
still fret. Yeah. I know. I tried all those different things. I've got a little video on slide on YouTube because I tried the jet slide and the ring slides, and I was in a band that was doing solo Beatles tribute to all the solo Beatle albums instead of the Beatle years, even though I did the Beatle years for 13 years, being George. And I needed to like get the slide and play and put it back so that I could play other things. And so I found this thing that was a holder, and you
Oh,
just put it right. And that was the easiest thing to do because it still gave me the sound I wanted with the level. Like I like the height of the medium weight off those strings. And yeah, that was cool.
brass for me is that I could still play chords. I could pick the slide up from the pinky, and I could still do, you know,
Right.
play some
Still
chords.
3 fingers working. Yeah. So cool. I love the sound. And George started playing it in 1969 and I thought that's a good sound. I want to do that too. That's when Guitar Player had the little ads in the back, and it was like 3 different kinds of slides, sent away for it. Mom, you got to write me a check. Here's the money. So great.
It's
What else? There's so much. I mean, what about Madonna and Like a Virgin and some of those tracks?
Madonna she was an interesting sort.
Was she really a drummer? They say she started out as a drummer. Did you ever hear her play?
Never heard her play drums when I worked with her, but she she was very particular. She knew what she wanted. She wasn't afraid to say it, and she wasn't afraid to, speak her mind up. She was certainly not timid. She's very professional, but but she was very, when she put her foot down, you know, she put her foot down, and it didn't matter what Nile Rodgers said, or it was,
Oh, wow.
the original lyric, I don't believe, was getting touched for the very first time. Well, just it was not. It was a little more graphic than that. Let's put it
Hmm.
that way. But the record company was pretty sure it wasn't going to get played on the radio. If that,
My sister was very young at the time, like maybe 8, and she was running around singing that song. And my mother was like, oh, no. Does she know what she's saying?
well, Madonna would say, she goes, if Michael Jackson, this was right on the heels of Thriller, so Thriller sold, 30 million records. He goes, if Michael Jackson can sell 30 million records, I can sell 30 million records.
Yeah. And she had his manager from the beginning. So she
Yeah.
knew what she was after.
She was very, she was a pro,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and she did
Incredible business mind.
incredible business mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
she
So
was.
when I was showing you those blurbs that mean nothing but trying to make it have sense, did any of that
Yeah,
make you think you could possibly scribble some stuff and have fun with words yourself?
I do read a lot of books. I read, I'm on airplanes a lot, so I read.
That's the best.
I it's like I spend each day at least read a couple hours a day, so I can see myself doing that, even if it's
Yeah.
a word and writing it down. Read out of whatever I'm reading. Instead of having to come pop into my head, oh, that's a good word. That one down.
Oh, yeah. When a little moment happens, the best thing to do is to harness it somehow. Put it in your phone notes or put it on a piece of paper where all of them end up so you don't have to go looking for them. Because
Right.
then when the idea comes that you have a little bit of a initiative to want to see if any of these things fit together, like James Taylor's always saying, he just puts all these little ideas together and just sees if any of them can play together. Will any of these fit, because it doesn't always come out as a whole.
I have a friend of mine where I go to a brewery and have lunch, and usually a kombucha tea and then a beer, and we call it our book club, and
Oh,
she'll
wow.
she'll actually have a piece of paper and she'll write down like phrases from the book, so she doesn't have to go back in and find them that she likes.
Yes.
Keeps a piece of paper and writes them down, so it's kind of the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do that with sounds. If there's a particular bass sound on an album that I want, if there's a particular effect or something I want to try, or, oh, yeah, I want to remember to do the snaps in a song or put this kind of harmony vocal. I just make lists of things. So then when I go, this song needs something, what is it? It's like, oh, yeah, that wood block thing. Where is that piece of thing that I was going to hit when I said I wanted to save it as a percussion? And then just try things. And the cool thing is nobody's looking over your shoulder and nobody's expecting anything, you
No,
know. But
I mean, right now I've gone. I don't think I use any effects now on my guitar. It's all like both hands are where I get my tone from and where I get my sound from, and
yeah,
I don't. I'm kind of digging it these days. I don't. I have everybody's got these big pedal boards and all this stuff. It's like they go, what do you use to get your sound? I'm like, it's right here.
It's exactly where it all starts. Absolutely.
And this hand.
Yeah, because you could pass around one acoustic guitar. That happened to me at a party once. Everybody said, "Let's play a song each," and they passed around the same guitar to 12 different people. And somebody said, "It sounded best in your hands than anybody else's." And I was a little embarrassed at first, but it was like, if it's a nice instrument, I know how to get a good sound out of it.
Right.
Whereas even if it's a very expensive instrument, a novice wouldn't know how to get a good sound out of it.
See if I have one of my I play the old Dunlop Jazz 2s.
Oh, right. I have the 1.5.
The red ones.
I have the purple ones, the 1.5 millimeter purple ones, light purple. But Chet Atkins used to say that, right? He'd be playing along and somebody come by and say, "Wow, that guitar sounds amazing." And he says, "Does it?" And he'd put it down in the stand and say, "Now, how does it sound?"
It's like if I ask somebody to play my guitar because I want to hear what it sounds like out in the house, it doesn't make any sense because it's not going to sound anything like I'm playing it.
Exactly. Exactly. What about favorite authors then? Or favorite books? What kind of books do you read?
I read a lot of fiction because I have enough reality around me at all times that
Yeah.
try to get away from it and try to get. I don't know. I have piles of hardcovers. I don't read anyone. I just look at the New York Times bestseller list and sort of go from there.
Knock them off. Yeah. And do you listen to books too?
No,
No, you don't do the Audible thing?
No, the whole point's to read. If I got enough Audible in my world, I don't need to have that too.
That's true. You're listening and using those ears enough. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, the yeah, the thing about the lyrics is it's all up to you and anything works.
Yeah, I've written one song. It's it's dark.
That's okay.
Lyrically, it's dark and it works. And but what I want to do is find somebody who's really good at writing lyrics and just hand them off all this music. I mean, if you like Jerry Garcia had Robert Hunter. Jerry didn't write any lyrics.
Right.
Bob Weir had John Barlow, who wrote all his words, and so
Elton had Bernie.
Right, exactly. So it's not uncommon to have find somebody that can actually figure out a way. What's interesting too about lyrics and about interpretation is the Grateful Dead have a song called "The Music Never Stopped," which was a song that Bob Weir wrote. It was originally handed to Robert Hunter to write lyrics for, and you can find it online. It's pretty interesting. It's called Hollywood or something like that. Hollywood something, and it's the same music as "The Music Never Stopped," but completely wrong. And so he took it away and gave it to Barlow, who wrote "The Music Never Stopped." But it's a great way to sort of show how here's one piece of music, same piece of music, that is interpreted by this writer and then interpreted by this writer.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's infinite.
It's Robert. You're talking about Robert Hunter, who's one of the written some of the amazing lyrics that it was just terrible, it was so wrong for the song. So I'll play it for people. I'll say, here's a good, even though you're a good writer and a good lyricist, doesn't mean you're going to get it right at all.
No. I mean, you have to sort of give someone a glimpse of your heart or your head or your, where you're coming from, where you want it to start or begin or end. I mean, it's almost like a reference mix. It's like,
and I think
give someone a clue lyrically.
Rough mixes, I would purposely fuck up a rough mix, like mute stuff, because evidently most record companies are like, hey, they really love the rough, because you're not thinking, you're just out there, making a rough mix.
And they've heard it more often, so they think that's the one.
It's called demoitis. It's like where it's like it's what they hear, so it doesn't sound like what I've been listening to for the past 2 months, and so
exactly.
I always fuck it up. I muted everything for a second, then open it back up, or mute, just make something fucked up with it so A couldn't be used, and B,
and they wouldn't prefer.
Just go with the rough.
And they wouldn't prefer it.
Right.
What do you remember about recording the Secret Story album? Because I almost went on that tour with Pat.
Oh, that
That
was
was
that was
phenomenal music.
that was very difficult record. And it's actually it's an interesting story because we were mixing it up in Studio D, the Power Station. And Pat would take home, this is before CDs and stuff, but he would take home a cassette
Yes.
and he'd come back in every day and he'd always want like the cymbals louder or the shakers louder. I'm like, Are you sure the azimuth on the deck you're playing, because he was playing it like a piano box. And, as we know, if the azimuth isn't lined up properly, then
There it goes.
there goes your high end. We got in this huge fight and I'm like, fuck it, I quit. So I
Oh my goodness.
started walking to the elevator and he catches me before the elevator. He goes, all right, all right, all right. All right. I said, you can't judge a song mix on a cassette. You just, unless you're sitting there tweaking the azimuth to get the top, all of the frequencies there. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
listen. I'm not gonna listen to you tell me that the cymbals need louder because they don't.
That's funny. That's
So
really
Secret
funny.
Story was a hard one. It was a very, it was complex. All those records were complex.
Tons of music on them. Did you also record the London Symphony Orchestra for him?
I did not. That was done by the guy out there.
And
We
then
for the orchestra, and then those tapes came back to me in New York. And I
you
put,
folded it back in. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
yeah, those records, the Pat Metheny group records, were by far the most difficult records I ever did.
Do you remember how some of the Secret Story stuff was first started? Like, what were some of the basic tracks?
I mean, he would start. He had a synclavier for years, and so
Yeah.
he would write a lot of his basic sort of sequences, he'd call them, on a synclavier. And so we would sort of translate and redo a lot of those synclavier parts with real people.
Mm.
And some of the synclavier parts stayed.
He would do the whole band that way?
He would get not, I mean, obviously not, this was before you could do drums and things like that. But
Oh, okay.
he would have the basis of, the
Yeah.
basis of what he was going to be doing. And he'd bring that into the studio. And most of the time we just slave the synclavier with time code
Wow.
and then dump it. Sometimes it never got done. That's why some of those tapes will never be able to be sort of looked at over again, because we didn't dump everything to tape. A lot of stuff was slaved when we were mixing. So
Yeah.
we weren't thinking that far ahead that technology was going to change.
I know my first album on the half-inch 8-track had a whole bunch of virtual tracks of synths and drum machines all slaved to a sync tone. So there's
Yeah.
only 7 tracks of analog things with a sync tone.
Well,
And
there
nobody ever told me to dump all the virtual onto clean tape so I'd have it years later to put
so
back
the sync
together.
tone, of course, bled over to track 8, bled to track 7. So track 7.
Yeah, yeah. What about those vocalists, the ones with the did those folks actually come into the studio? Or was
Well,
that sampled somewhere else, recorded somewhere else?
no, we would take. Pat was very good at manipulating things with his sync.
Oh,
He was very good at, doing these multiple hand things to get things to do. Well, we were taking,
on his synclavier?
yeah.
Or-
So we would find samples. I think those samples came from they were African samples or some kind of sample or somewhere, and he would just manipulate them and into that and created that particular sound.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because those folks have other albums where it sounds like that
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Pedro Aznar played, or sung, I should say, sung on a lot of the records, and you had Mark Ledford and David Blameyers
Yeah.
sung on a bunch of them. Richard Bona,
Bulgarian Voices or something. I have a couple of albums of theirs upstairs.
yeah, it's
Can't remember the name.
I can't either.
I thought he had actually used those folks.
I don't
Wow.
believe so. I think we used some of the recordings that he sort of manipulated.
Okay. That's interesting. Very interesting.
We didn't actually have them in the studio recording them.
Yeah, I love
At least not that I can remember. And that doesn't mean they weren't there.
I love that he could produce things and tinker things and play with sounds and manipulate sounds and work with synths or play with his guitar in different ways or trigger trumpet sounds. All those things that he would do were so interesting. I mean, they
Well,
still are.
he was the first guy to do it, really. I mean, he in
Yeah.
large scale, he was, in a way, he invented that whole thing.
Well,
That
his
whole,
brother was a trumpet player and he started on trumpet. Then he's like, nah, I really want guitar.
yeah. He's good though, Pat. I mean, Pat. It's funny. Pat never even knew I played guitar, and then one day I had a gig at the wetlands, and he came down to the wetlands, and he's just standing there in the middle, and his jaw's just going like this. And the next day we were going to the studio. He goes, "It all makes sense now, because it all makes sense." I said, "Well, what?" I said, "What makes sense?" He goes, "Well, that you can do what you do. It all makes sense now."
Absolutely. If you don't really know how to create sounds or to feel the sound as you're creating it, I don't see how you could learn how to capture it.
he was he was just like, "I get it now." He goes, "I never knew how you could do what you do." He goes, "Now it all makes sense."
Wow. And you were just at the power station and got assigned to work with him, like when you
Yep,
guys first met, it was
yep.
just like, here's your engineer.
I was
How you do?
21 and he was 25,
Wow.
and it was a long run. It was 20 years at least, of you know.
Phenomenal. We have to do this to you.
So
We just have to
I'm
standing O, my friend. Standing O.
I'm proud of some of those records. I don't think many people could have done what I did with them. I mean,
I
not
don't think so either. So tell
but
me what were those things you did?
just the enormity of the complexity of layers and layers
Yes.
of things. And
You mean a gigantic mix, lots of tracks to deal with.
I've got 100 tracks,
Yeah. That
and
was really different back then.
you've got to hear all. Pat wants to hear every little bit of every little track,
Yeah. And he knows everything that's in there that's supposed to be
everything
there.
that's on there,
Yeah.
Oh, it was being able to do all that, and then technically to be able to, hook up anything you wanted to hook up and do whatever you needed to do, and mixing was mixing. It's just we
And
just became a team for a very long time.
how many assistants did you have to help get all that stuff ready and
I mean,
to
I did it. I mean, once I left staff at Power Station, which would have been 89 or 90, then Pat followed me over. We went, did some one or two records at the Hit Factory, the new
Hmm.
Hit Factory, which is like a block away. And then we did a lot of stuff at Right Track. So we kind of bounced around. So I had a lot of different assistants, a lot of
Sure.
different places. Um, didn't have one specific one at Power Station that worked with me all the time. It was kind of like whoever was assigned to me at that particular time was, because someone might have been on, we had 24/7 studio, so you had 6 sessions a day unless you were blocked out. So
Wow.
there
And
was
Pat would block out, no?
we would block out because our studio was all, we had everything. Lyle would have his whole room with all his shit and the drums and have we
Yeah.
had
You don't want to break that down every day. God.
no. No, we don't want to break it down every day. No.
Do you have any kind of mixer at your house now?
No, I do it all in the box, as I call it.
Yeah.
I mix it all in the box. I've I've toyed with, getting a, 12 faders on a, I don't know, it's just I can I don't know.
Controller, not an analog.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
If
Well,
I'm gonna
you
go
and
analog, I'm gonna go large scale analog, like
yeah,
most now I'll just take Pro Tools and they have it coming through two faders. Like I would have every channel coming into the console.
yeah,
I would do it all. I would just have the Pro Tools be the tape machine.
right.
Right now, Pro Tools is, everything. It's your whole world.
Mine?
Mine.
Yeah. Logic is pretty much my whole world. But like Leanne Unger is a friend of mine, and she was so cool that she doesn't own much of any gear. She just has a couple of few vintage microphones, and she's saving her money. Very smart person. I indulge myself in all my interests and passions, and look for tools to help me create the songs I want to make happen because they're not going to happen any other way. You know?
No, and it's the technology keeps changing. It's I don't know what's, everything right now that I have on Pro Tools. I keep thinking, I should probably dump all those files off just to WAV files to put somewhere to put in another format once Pro Tools is done. But I think Pro Tools is here for a little while anyway.
Yeah. It almost seems like some major studios are on the way back. Do you think?
I don't know. I think so.
Because I think it's definitely going to hit the wall when people realize they really can't do what real engineers like you do.
No, and
And if you
I,
really make,
yeah, I can only do so much here. If I'm recording drums and stuff, I've got to go somewhere to do that. I'm not obviously doing it in my house, but
yeah,
I can do
you,
everything
you,
else.
you could.
I could, I have, but it's not.
Yeah. I have, drums at my house at all the different houses I've had, but
It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier if I don't have to run cables from one room to another.
yeah, yeah,
It's already done for me. It makes it a
that's
lot.
true. And the room sounds good and all those things.
Yep.
My gosh. Favorite console?
Neve.
Yeah.
The 86 with 8068, 8088, 8058. I mean, any of those
Yeah.
old Neve consoles are kind of where
Did you like the VR? I have 2 channels of a VR.
I did not like the VR. That was my least favorite.
My least favorite. That's funny.
least
I
favorite.
have the Portico. I have the MBP master bus processor, and I have 2 1073
Well,
modules. I guess
1073s those are all right.
those are nice. But you like the 8088s and 58s and
Well, the 8080 is just basically a 40 channel 8068. So, Power Station had one custom built because we had 8068s, but they're only 32 faders.
hmm,
So they built us an 8088, which is basically an 8068 with 8 more faders.
hmm.
Same console, same thing.
What's your favorite vocal mic for you?
If I had my choice, my favorite vocal mics in general would be
For your voice, like if you were performing versus recording?
I use a Neumann on stage, KMS 105
Oh,
live, but in the studio I would do, not for me specifically, but my favorite vocal mics would be a C10.
hmm.
Um, C10 is, it depends on how many microns the diaphragm is. If it's 3 or 4 where they just look at it and it pops, probably not. Maybe 7 microns would be good. Elam 451. There was just some, I don't know. Everybody's voice is different.
Yeah.
Some people needed a darker mic. Some people needed, the 47s tubes weren't my favorites. The 49s certainly not my favorites.
Really? How come?
I don't know. I used 49s for doing orchestras. They were great. Put them on a tree, put 3 on a tree, call it a day.
Left, right, and center?
Left, right, and center. Yep. And then I used a lot of MS, techniques, sometimes recording horns in the studios just to get the feel of the horns in the room,
Hmm.
which is something most people don't do anymore.
Did you ever do much of ORTF?
No.
I have to look up even what that is. I learned about it yesterday.
Yeah. That I have. When you find out, let me know. Teach me.
It's so hard to know. You know so much stuff. Yeah, it's like, where do you go? What do you ask?
Well, it's just funny. It's people just don't understand. And I tell my young kids, like when they're miking everything and they're close miking everything, I said, put your ear down there and have them hit the drum. Tell me what it sounds like. So John Bonham was realized that my drums don't sound right when they're close mic'd. So he would, the reason they got the sort of big sound was they left the door open to Robert Plant's hallway where his vocal mic was on and Bonham was playing. It's like, whoa, what's that? And so every time after that, John Bonham would stand up at his drum kit, and if he could hit any microphone with his drumstick, he just keep smashing it until someone came out and moved it out of his
Backed it up.
out of range.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, sometimes I have a closer mic for the beater head of the kick, but I want to put one back several feet because these gigantic sound waves are going right by the mic, right? So
Yeah,
mm,
it's
they would do that with Paul's bass too. Just set up a mic
yeah. I
like
mean,
16 feet away.
you don't, you don't listen to right next. Like people will put a microphone right on a say a guitar speaker. They put it right on the voice coil or the center. I'm like, well, you got to realize that's the tweeter of the speaker, and then as you go out, that's the woofer. So you want it bright, you put it right over the tweeter. If you want it not so bright, you move it or move it back. And I always mic the back of the cabinet if it's an open cabinet.
Yeah, I
So
like the sound.
too, and I'll put this one out of phase, and the tones from the back are pretty cool too.
Nice. I like miking my upright piano low in the back too. It seems warmer.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But I noticed that I love that with microphones, how you can record off axis. I'll move my acoustic guitar around a mic if I'm standing and then just see what sounds best as I'm recording. So I don't have to use EQ and things. I'm just trying to get a blend with the tracks that are already there.
Smart. Smart way to
And, when Pat was looking for the rhythm guitarist to go out on the road to do the Secret Story tour, he asked the people auditioning to send in a cassette playing along with one of his songs, and I chose "It's for You," and it had a lot of beautiful voicings in it and a ton of rhythm guitar. Like people think of Pat just as a lead player, but
He's a great rhythm player.
he grooves up a storm. So it was an important part. And when I sent in the recording, I did just that. I moved my acoustic guitar around a mic and got mine to sound like his. It was your sound probably because you had recorded it, and then put it in that way. And my keyboard player said, that sounds too good. Nobody, if somebody's screening these for him, they're not even going to know you're on here. Like you've got to give them an actual serious mix. So I took my guitar and put it from center to the right on the cassette on the back, and then put his album from center to the left so that somebody screening it could be alerted to the fact that I was really playing those exact voicings, trying my best to do his exact rhythm and to make it sound good because I love blending. And he loved it. Came down to him choosing two people, me and this other guy who had touring experience, and he chose the guy with the touring experience. But then I was supposed to go to Europe with him, and I put that recording of the exact audition on my YouTube channel because my students need to hear that it's important to listen. It's important to match. It's important to do things similar if you're trying to join an existing band or you're trying to reproduce hits that everybody recognizes. They're going to kind of want the guitar player to do what was on the record. You have to ask, you have to communicate and find out, do you want me to do my own thing? And do you want me to do what's already there? Those are cool skills. So yeah, he got a kick out of that. And then he spent 2 hours with me and Steve Rodby at my house in Newton when I lived in Newton, just playing for 2 hours. You think you can get away from Berkeley? Yeah, that could be arranged. I'd do the tour, sure.
It's been great talking to you, and we'll do it
Super.
again. If we want to do it again, I have some more stuff for anytime.
Oh, thank you so much. I would love to do it again. You're so cool.
Anytime, my friend. Anytime. And
Thank you so much, Rob.
if if students have any questions, feel free to toss them out or throw me on a Zoom. It's all good.
Yeah, you got to come to Berkeley again. I'm sure all those folks in the MP&E would love to see you again.
Yeah, I got a tour a year or two ago. I got a nice big tour of the whole facility. It's pretty impressive.
Have you seen the new power station since Berkeley took it over?
No, I haven't. I'd like to get back there one day since it's my old
Yeah,
stuff.
me too. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, maybe next time I'm in New York and you are, we'll go together.
What were you in Boston recently doing?
I was playing at the Wang Theater with my band.
I missed it. I had no idea. I should have asked.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful theater, by the way.
It
Gorgeous,
is. Yeah, I've seen James there and Carly and
beautiful, gorgeous theater. So we played there on Thursday night. Was it Thursday night? Friday night? God, I can't remember now.
bravo. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk soon.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much.
Got it.
Ciao.
Ciao.